Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into a book that completely flipped the Silicon Valley tech world on its head and fundamentally rewrote the rules of entrepreneurship, product management, and modern business strategy. If you have ever dreamed of building a startup, launching a new product line within your existing company, or if you are tired of spending months or even years working on a project only to find out that nobody actually wants to buy it when you finally launch, this video is your ultimate savior. We are doing a massive, deep dive story breakdown of the iconic masterpiece, The Lean Startup, how today's entrepreneurs use continuous innovation to create radically successful businesses by Ries. Ries realized that traditional management models, the ones taught in elite business schools that rely on long-term forecasting, massive upfront market research, and rigid product roadmaps, fail catastrophically when applied to startups. Why? Because startups operate in a state of absolute, radical uncertainty. The Lean Startup introduces a scientific, highly structured methodology designed to eliminate waste, optimize human potential, and find out exactly what customers want in real time before you run out of capital. Get comfortable, grab your favorite drink, open a fresh page in your notebook, and let us discover how to build a business that scales with absolute velocity. Part 1. The Myth of the Perfect Plan. Let us start our story by looking at a classic entrepreneurial tragedy. Imagine a brilliant software engineer named David. David has a phenomenal idea for a new mobile application that helps local freelance photographers connect with clients. He is incredibly passionate about this vision. David behaves exactly the way traditional business books tell him to behave. He locks himself in a room for 3 entire months and writes a highly detailed, 50-page business plan. He projects his revenues, charts his market demographics, and outlines a flawless product roadmap for the next 2 years. Next, David raises a substantial amount of seed capital from friends, family, and angel investors. He hires a team of talented developers and designers, rents a trendy co-working space, and dives deep into stealth mode product development. For 12 straight months, the office is buzzing with energy. The technicians are coding furiously, the designers are tweaking the user interface, and David is managing the milestones perfectly. They are on time and on budget. Finally, the grand launch day arrives. David releases the app to the App Store, pops a bottle of champagne with his team, and waits for the thousands of downloads to flood in. But nothing happens. A few dozen people download the app, but they delete it within 24 hours. David spends thousands of dollars on social media advertising to force traffic to the app, but the user retention metrics stay at absolute zero. It turns out that while David built a beautiful, bug-free piece of software, he built something that nobody actually cared about. The core assumptions of his business plan were completely wrong, but he didn't discover that until he had already spent all his money and 12 months of his life. Ries explains that David's failure was not a failure of execution. David executed his plan perfectly. His failure was a failure of the plan itself. Under conditions of extreme uncertainty, traditional management is a death sentence. You cannot forecast the future when you do not even know who your true customer is or what features they value. The Lean Startup method is built to prevent this tragedy by replacing speculation with systematic experimentation. Part 2. The true definition of a startup. To understand how to fix David's approach, we have to look at how Ries defines a startup. He presents a remarkably broad, radical definition that changes who this framework applies to. A startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. Notice that this definition doesn't say anything about the size of the company, the sector of the economy, or the amount of venture capital funding. It doesn't matter if you are 2 college students working out of a dirty garage or a massive 100-year-old automotive corporation trying to build a new autonomous electric vehicle division. If you are dealing with a human institution trying to innovate where the future cannot be predicted, you are a startup, and you need a completely different type of management. Ries introduces a concept called entrepreneurial management. Traditional managers are evaluated based on their ability to stick to a budget, hit operational milestones, and maintain quality control. But in a startup, you can easily hit all your milestones on time and still drive the company directly off a cliff. Entrepreneurial management focuses entirely on learning. It requires you to shift your scorecard from how much stuff you are building to how much you are discovering. Part 3. The core engine of validated learning. The most revolutionary concept in the Lean Startup is the idea of validated learning. Ries argues that the single biggest waste in business today is not inefficient factories or lazy employees. It is building products that nobody wants. When a startup fails, the founders often look back and try to put a positive spin on the disaster. They say, well, it didn't work out, but we learned a massive amount about the market, so it wasn't a total loss. Ries rejects this comfort. He states that if your learning isn't backed up by cold, hard, empirical data from real customers, it isn't validated learning. It is just an excuse for failure. Validated learning is the scientific method applied to entrepreneurship. You treat your business vision as a set of hypotheses that must be tested. You do not ask your friends if they think your idea is cool. You do not run focus groups where people say what they think they would do in the future. Instead, you run micro-experiments that measure actual human behavior. You build systems that track whether real human beings are willing to click a link, enter their email address, give you their credit card number, or use your product day after day. Validated learning is the true yardstick of progress for a startup. If you cannot prove that your daily efforts are helping you discover how to build a sustainable business, you are just spinning your wheels in a vacuum of delusion. Part 4. The Build, Measure, Learn Feedback Loop. How do you achieve validated learning with maximum speed? You do it by mastering the fundamental metabolic rate of a startup, the Build, Measure, Learn Feedback Loop. Every startup idea begins as a set of leaps of faith. These are the foundational assumptions that must be true for your business to survive. The two most critical assumptions are the value hypothesis and the growth hypothesis. The value hypothesis tests whether a product or service really delivers value to customers once they use it. The growth hypothesis tests how new customers will discover the product over time. The Build, Measure, Learn loop is the mechanism that tests these hypotheses as quickly as humanly possible. The loop works like this. First, you enter the build phase. You take your abstract ideas and hypotheses and transform them into a basic, physical product that you can get into the hands of real users. Second, you enter the measure phase. You watch how users interact with what you built. You gather quantitative data, track metrics, and look at the real behavioral responses of your target market. Third, you enter the learn phase. You look at the data honestly. You evaluate whether your assumptions were correct. Based on that learning, you make a monumental strategic decision. Do you persevere with your current strategy, or do you pivot and change direction entirely? The ultimate goal of a startup is to minimize the total time it takes to travel through this feedback loop. The company that can run through the build, measure, learn cycle the fastest is the company that will win, because they will discover the truth about their customers long before their competitors do. Part 5. The Minimum Viable Product Protocol. To accelerate your speed through the loop, Ries introduces one of the most famous and misunderstood tools in modern business history, the minimum viable product, or MVP. Most perfectionist entrepreneurs look at their product as their masterpiece. They refuse to let anyone see it until it has every single feature fully coded, beautifully designed, and completely polished. They believe that releasing an imperfect product will ruin their brand reputation forever. Ries challenges this mindset directly. He defines an MVP as that version of a new product which allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. An MVP is not a sloppy, broken product thrown together without care. It is a highly strategic experiment designed to answer a specific question. Ries shares incredible stories of famous companies that launched with mind-blowing MVPs. Look at Zappos, the massive online shoe retailer. When the founder, Nick Swinmurn, wanted to test his value hypothesis, whether people were actually willing to buy shoes online without trying them on first, he didn't spend millions of dollars building a giant automated warehouse, purchasing wholesale inventory, and setting up complex supply chains. Instead, he walked down to his local shoe store, took photos of the shoes on the shelves, and posted those photos on a basic, free website. When a customer clicked buy on his site, Nick walked back to the local shoe store, bought the shoes at full retail price with his own money, and shipped them to the customer from the post office. Nick's MVP was completely manual and completely unscalable behind the scenes. It cost almost nothing to set up, but it gave him the ultimate validation. Real human beings were willing to put their credit card numbers into a website to buy shoes online. Once he proved that value hypothesis, he could confidently invest millions of dollars to build the scalable infrastructure of Zappos. Another brilliant example is Dropbox. The technical challenge of building a seamless, bug-free cloud storage platform that synchronized files across multiple operating systems in real time was incredibly complex and expensive. Instead of writing a single line of production code, the founder, Drew Houston, created a simple 3-minute demonstration video. He narrated the video himself, showing a prototype of how the product would work if it existed. He posted that video on a basic landing page. Overnight, the video went viral, and his email waiting list exploded from 5,000 to 75,000 people. That video, MVP, proved the massive market demand before a team of engineers spent a year building the actual backend architecture. The rule for creating an MVP is simple. Eliminate every single feature, process, or effort that does not contribute directly to the learning you are trying to acquire. Your goal is not to show off your technical skills. Your goal is to find out if anyone cares about what you are building. Part 6. The Trap of Vanity Metrics. When you enter the measure phase of the feedback loop, you have to be incredibly careful about the numbers you look at. Ries warns us against falling in love with what he calls vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are data points that make you feel amazing, look spectacular in a press release, and give the illusion of massive success but do not actually reflect the health or sustainability of your business. Examples of vanity metrics include total registered users, total website hits, total app downloads, or raw social media followers. Imagine David's photography app getting 10,000 downloads because of a viral social media post. David's team celebrates, thinking they are rich. But if you look closer at the actionable metrics, you see that out of those 10,000 users, only 3 people opened the app a second time, and 0 people completed a transaction. The 10,000 download metric is a dangerous vanity metric that hides the terminal illness of the product. To combat this, the Lean Startup Framework requires you to focus on actionable, accessible, and auditable metrics, famously known as the 3 A's. An actionable metric is one that shows a clear cause and effect relationship. If you change a feature on your website, an actionable metric will tell you exactly how that specific change altered user behavior. Ries champions the use of cohort analysis instead of looking at cumulative numbers. Instead of tracking total users over time, you break your customers down into distinct groups based on when they joined your platform. For example, you look at the group of users who signed up in the first week of May and track their retention rate over 30 days. Then, you look at the group who signed up in the second week of May after you added a new feature. If the retention rate of the second cohort is significantly higher, you have validated proof that your new feature actively improved customer value. Move away from the big, beautiful numbers that feed your ego and focus on the cold, granular metrics that reveal the truth about human engagement. Part 7. The monumental decision to pivot or persevere. As you continue to run through the build, measure, learn loop, you will eventually reach a critical fork in the road. This is the moment where you must choose whether to pivot or persevere. Persevering means your hypotheses are being validated by the actionable metrics. Your cohorts are improving, customers are buying, and you should keep driving down the same strategic path, optimizing and refining the product. A pivot is a structured, strategic correction designed to test a new premium hypothesis about the product, strategy, and engine of growth. A pivot is not a total surrender or a sign of failure. It is an intentional shift that keeps one foot firmly planted in what you have already learned, while moving the other foot onto a more promising path. Ries outlines several types of pivots that startups can execute. There is the zoom-in pivot, where a single, specific feature of a product becomes the entire standalone product because that is the only part customers care about. There is the zoom-out pivot, where the entire product you built becomes just a tiny feature within a much larger, more comprehensive platform. There is the customer segment pivot, where you realize that the product you built is excellent, but it is being embraced by a completely different target market than the one you originally planned for. There is the technology pivot, where you discover a way to deliver the exact same value to customers using a different, far more efficient infrastructure. Knowing when to pivot is one of the hardest emotional battles an entrepreneur will ever face. It requires you to set aside your pride, look at your failing data with absolute clarity, and adapt before your bank account hits zero. A startup's runway shouldn't be measured in months. It should be measured in the number of pivots it has left to execute. Part 8. The 3 engines of growth. The final major framework of the lean startup addresses how a company scales once it has successfully found a product-market fit. Ries explains that sustainable growth is a predictable system driven by one of 3 distinct engines of growth. The first engine is the sticky engine of growth. This model relies entirely on high user retention rates. Companies that use this engine, like social networks, enterprise software platforms, or subscription services, grow by ensuring that once a customer starts using the product, they rarely leave. The key metric to track here is the natural rate of compounding customer retention compared to the churn rate. If your new customer acquisition rate exceeds your churn rate, your company will grow sustainably. The second engine is the viral engine of growth. This engine relies on organic word-of-mouth networks, where the product naturally advertises itself just by being used. Think of platforms like Hotmail, WhatsApp, or Zoom. Every time a user interacts with the product, they automatically invite their friends or colleagues into the ecosystem. The critical metric here is the viral coefficient. If one user naturally pulls in more than one additional user, your growth curve will shoot up exponentially like an uncontrollable epidemic. The third engine is the paid engine of growth. This model relies on traditional advertising, direct sales teams, and paid marketing channels. To grow sustainably using this engine, you must balance a simple math equation. The lifetime value of a customer must significantly exceed the customer acquisition cost. If it costs you $20 in advertising to acquire a user, but that user generates $50 in profit over their lifetime, you can confidently pour every dollar of revenue back into your marketing machine to scale your operation at speed. A startup must identify its primary engine of growth and pour its resources into optimizing the specific metrics that drive that engine, avoiding the temptation to chase every marketing fad simultaneously. The ultimate takeaway. Let us bring our story back to David and his photography application. Imagine that instead of hiding in his room for a year, David embraced the lean startup methodology. On day one, David writes down his core hypotheses. Instead of building the software, he creates a simple landing page with a few stock photos, showcasing what the app will do, and places a prominent button that says, "Find a photographer today." He spends $50 on ads to drive 50 local users to that page. He measures how many people click that button. When 20 people click it and enter their email addresses, David validates his value hypothesis immediately. Next, David builds an incredibly basic MVP, a simple manual WhatsApp group where he connects 5 local freelance photographers with 3 clients who need work done. He manages the entire process manually behind the scenes, using spreadsheets and text messages. Through this fast, unpolished experiment, David learns that photographers do not care about a beautiful portfolio feature. They just want a secure escrow payment system so they do not get ripped off by clients. David pivots his product strategy immediately to focus entirely on escrow payments. He builds a streamlined, targeted software application that addresses that exact pain point. His cohorts are highly engaged, his churn rate drops to 0, and his business experiences explosive, sustainable scaling. David achieved a multi-million-dollar business success because he had the courage to test his assumptions before he built the product. Look at your own business dreams or your corporate innovation pipelines today. Stop guessing what the world wants. Stop wasting your precious time, energy, and capital building monuments to your own assumptions. Get out of the building. Run a micro-experiment. Build an MVP. Measure actual human behavior. Embrace validated learning. And build an adaptable, resilient startup that can conquer the future with confidence. What is the #1 leap of faith assumption in your current business project that you need to test with a minimum viable product this week? Let me know your learning goals in the comments down below. If this deep dive summary shattered your traditional planning illusions and handed you a scientific blueprint for innovation, show your love by clicking that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another profound business book breakdown, and share this video with an aspiring founder who needs